Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today Great.com talks with Francois Dutoy, CEO of the African Conservation Trust. If you haven't heard of it yet, the ACT has been driving impactful initiatives encompassing food security, heritage preservation, erosion control, and other conservation programs in South Africa. Before we begin, remember, if you're new here to this podcast, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Hi, Francois, and welcome.
Thanks, Danny. Lovely to be here.
Oh, thank you. I'm really eager to talk to you and learn more about what you guys are doing. And in my introduction today, I kind of focused the work that ACT has been doing in South Africa, which it started in 2003, but the trust has been working way earlier than that, right? Could you give us a quick overview of ACT's history and what you guys are doing right now?
Absolutely. So, Danielle, we started in the year 2000. Literally, the trust was formed with a great friend of mine called Grossman, and we were sharing a digs together in Durban, which is on the east coast of South Africa. And we'd just come back in 1997, 98. We'd just come back from a 42-day camping trip in Malawi, and we saw the great need that was for social programs in Malawi. And so Carl wanted to get back to Malawi, so he formed the African Conservation Trust, and we started a volunteer organization in Malawi that actually did a hippo census, a hippopotamus census, to find out how many hippopotamuses were still left in the Lake Malawi. So that we were pretty much a volunteer-based organization for the first 3 to 5 years. We did some wild dog census in Botswana and little odds and sods. So kind of passion projects, I guess. Then in 2003, we were fortunate enough to get a small grant from the German Development Fund, or UNDP, around indigenous plants in a place called Manokolana in St. Lucia, which is also on the East Coast. So that began the program of us getting additional funding. I was still very much in touch with Carl at that point. I wasn't directly involved. I was a trustee for a couple of years, and then from a governance perspective, we decided we needed to split the board and the CEO position. In 2006, 2007, we managed to get additional funding. And as I said, we started this indigenous plant program with some Rasta artists in St. Lucia who were quite concerned about the amount of red ivory and mahogany and indigenous trees that were being removed from a forest called Dupudupu, which is on the west boundary of the Isimangaliso Wetland Park, which is now a World Heritage Site. And so we helped set up an indigenous nursery, or just really expand the work that they were doing. At that same time, I was fortunate enough to be managing a relatively large-scale myriad of projects, a recycling program in that area, in the Zululand area. We were doing some food security work. We were doing a range of different projects with another organization. And Carl, the chairman, gave me a shout and he said, listen, I hear you're pretty good at getting money from the National Lottery. What's your secret? I said, I don't know. I just know how to write. So, and we'd obviously stayed friends. I've known him since I was 18 years old. So for the last 40 odd years, we've known each other. And so Carl's passion was heritage work, as was mine. We had spent a great deal of time in the Ukatlamba, also a World Heritage Site, the Drakensberg, which is a 2-3 hour drive away from my hometown in Durban. And so what we wanted to do there, we noticed that there was a huge amount of degradation happening with the sand rock art in the Drakensberg. So we were able to put a proposal together to our National Lottery, and we secured some funding to do a 3D digital modeling of the rock art sites. So what that would do is that would create this 3D image, which you could then compare to later years to see what kind of damage had been done. And that was phase 1 of the project. That was successfully run in conjunction with the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And after that, we thought, well, let's write a few more proposals and see what happens. So we submitted a myriad of about 7 or 8 proposals to the National Lottery, thinking that if we got one, we'd be happy. At that point, I wasn't CEO at that point. I was sitting on the board, and we were both kind of consulting part-time to the projects and to African Conservation Trust. So we managed to secure about 50 million rands worth of projects and six or seven different projects, which were all of our passion projects. And that's the way we've always run this organization. So we had one of the projects was an indigenous butterfly, series of indigenous butterfly domes, which is to this day the only indigenous butterfly dome tour in the world. We had a recycling program, which we ended up partnering with the Wildlands Trust. We had some food security programs. We had additional rock art monitoring programs. And in that period, there were 140 known rock art sites in the one particular reserve in the Cathedral Peak. We discovered an additional 70 rock art sites that had never been seen before. We helped the Amafa KwaZulu-Natal Heritage and the Natal Museum map and digitize their rock art records, etc. So very exciting period for us. We were also able at that point to partner with about 13 other organizations and leverage an additional 20 million rand for those organizations. But as a result of that process, we had gone from an organization that was, as I said, started as a volunteer-based organization, then moved into massive implementation. And what we realized was that all the stuff we were doing was all very well. So we were doing food security programs. We were working with early childhood development centers because we recognized that nutrition at pre 5 years old, if you don't get decent nutrition into a child, their chances of having a decent school career are unbelievably limited. So we were observing these the complexity of problems that existed in South Africa, and particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, which is one of our most impoverished provinces. And we thought there's got to be a better way. So we started thinking about how do we engage with communities? How do we engage? Do we come and parachute a project in, which is the way most large NGOs or other government entities do? They'll conceptualize a program, they'll come in, they'll parachute it in, and then they wonder why it doesn't work. Excuse me. So we were just pondering about what is the best way to do these programs, because with our food security work, for instance, we never partnered with individuals and or organizations on the ground that didn't have an existing garden. We would rather take a gardener who's sitting at a 6 or a 7 and with additional impetus and training move them up to an 8 or a 9 than take someone who's a 3 or a 4 and try and move them up to a 5 or a 6. That's just not going to work. So all during this time, we were coming across all these various programs and all these various projects, and whilst implementing our own programs, we started to recognize that there were fundamental flaws that were being repeated over and over and over again. And as you know, Einstein said the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So at that time, this was 2010, 2011, in parallel to that, we had a massive upswing in rhino poaching in South Africa. And so we co-founded an organization called Project Rhino. And Project Rhino KZN continues to this day in a slightly different form. It's now a separate NGO. It's been set up like that. And we provided the secretariat and all of the operational costs for Project Rhino for the first 2 years at no cost to any other organization, because we realized that if we didn't do that, this collaborative would have collapsed. And the reason we did it is because the 18 organizations that were the founding members, and it's now grown to 55, are predominantly private game reserves. We also were working with the provincial game reserves, where the major pressure for rhino poaching was. And it was horrendous. It was just a bloodbath in those early years. We got to a point where we were losing 1,000 rhinos a year, and it was heartbreaking. But the reason we got involved as ACT is because we don't have a direct animal welfare or a save the rhino or save the cheetah or save the lion or save the giraffe. But what we're good at is bringing people together and making them stay focused on the end goal, keeping the main thing. Because just as if you think there's egos in business, there are bigger egos in the non-profit sector, because people are not doing it for the money mostly. They're generally doing it because they're passionate about something. So as a result of that, 10, 15 years later, well, it's nearly 10 years later now to 13 years later, Project Rhino runs itself. We're still directly involved, but we recognize that the communities on the outside of the reserve were the biggest risk and also the biggest asset to stopping rhino poaching. And as a direct result of that, we've been able to engage with all of these private rhino reserves all around KwaZulu-Natal. And our model has been followed by other clusters of rhino reserves around the country. So that's a huge thing. At the same time, funnily enough, an organization called Rhino Oil and Gas, which is founded by a Texas-based attorney, started wanting to explore for natural gas in KwaZulu-Natal in our critical watersheds. And so we founded an organization called Frack Free South Africa, which also continues today. So it's about bringing collaboratives together. But emerging out of that, then, we went through a bit of a hiatus in projects. We were implementing small projects here and there. And during this time, when we pretty much were at the lowest we've ever been, we had almost no funding. We literally we were on our knees this is all during COVID, which had huge impacts. I mean, all of the money ended up going to COVID. It went to emergency relief. It went to all that sort of stuff. And the environment is always the people don't look at the environment. They just think, oh, I've got a sick child here. I've got a unhealthy dog. I've got water problems here. What they don't realize is that the environment itself is the one that needs healing. And if we heal the environment, we'll be able to move forward. And so during this reflective period, I guess, a proposal came across our desk, a request for proposals from a special presidential stimulus program. It's called the Social Employment Fund. And so we submitted this at the end of 2021. And in the middle of last year, we started implementing a project. We currently, the project is called Building a Conservation Economy. And what we did is we built a project based on all of the relationships that we've had over the last 23 years. And we said, well, where are these individual little community groups that people don't know about or don't care about, but we've maintained those relationships. So we're currently employing 3,000 people over 4 provinces, all connected via WhatsApp. We have managed to train more than 3,000 people in agroecological farming practices. We have established more than 30,000 homestead gardens in this program. We have supported somewhere between 10 and 15 community-based organizations, each of whom are our kind of site coordinators. But the project and the principle is around a narrative that we're trying to define. And that is that we need to build what's called a conservation economy. And a conservation economy is not the biodiversity economy. It's not the wildlife economy. It's not the blue economy, the green economy, the gray economy, the brown economy, the circular economy. It's everything. A conservation economy is a resilient, respectful, resourceful, and regenerative economy. It means that we have to invest in the most precious asset that we've got, which is Mother Earth. And that is reflected in our vision statement, which we actually wrote 10 years ago, not realizing that we'd be doing this program now. So the conservation economy is mostly about respect. In Zulu, the term is called hlonipha. And so the Zulu term is hlonipha, to respect each other, to respect our cultures. And so conservation economy is just that. And that's what we're trying to do at a broad level. So in a nutshell, what we've wanted to do in various communities is to say to the community members what is important. And the what has got 4 letters, W-H-A-T. The W stands for water. If we don't protect water, we are finished. Water is life. If you look after water, you can feed crops, you can feed yourself. There's sanitation issues. You've got women and children that are able, women and girls that are able to go to school, all sorts of stuff around water. And so we teach water management principles. We don't have a shortage of water. We have a water management problem. The H stands for heritage. Heritage, it's like, who are you? Who is Daniel Ribeiro? Who is Francois du Toit? Who is, Kumbulani Ndaba? Who is Bawanile Mtolo? Who is, Sfiso Mbata? What does it mean to be a du Toit? What does it mean to be an Mbata? Where is your culture? Who are you? And I think as we've moved into this technological era, we've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten who our families are. We've lost community. The drive of capitalism and the drive of the individual, we've lost that sense of community. And that's what heritage for me is all about. And I'm hoping we can unlock that. The Zulu nation is an unbelievably proud nation, but I think they've lost it. They've lost the sense of who they are. So the A is for agriculture. And if you look at the Latin derivation of the word agriculture, it's agri, which is meaning land, and colere, which means to love, to nurture, to worship, and to care for. And that's the last thing we're doing with current modern chemical agriculture. We are killing everything. We're killing the land, we're killing the soil, we're killing the microbes, and we're killing the food. And the levels of obesity around the world are proof of that. So we teach agroecological farming practices because it's healthy food and it's also looking after the earth, and it's leaving a better earth and a better soil for future generations, which is your culture and your heritage. The final thing is trade, T for trade. And the trade basically is the trade of anything of value. And if you are deeply impoverished, it can be your time. It can just be listening to someone. It can be donating something to a granny or to a creche or an early childhood development center or anything. And so that's what is important. So what is ACT doing now and where are we headed? Well, we want to build conservation economies. And the way we want to do that is through something called a comprehensive communal plan. And that means that the communities themselves take ownership of developing their own plans, and they're not dictated to by governments or by politicians or by big business. And that the plan that they develop is their plan for their land, for their water, for their commerce, for their culture, and for their agriculture. And so that's basically what we're doing. We're getting to a point now where we've identified a number of traditional authorities in KwaZulu-Natal and some along the western boundary, let's say, for instance, of the Kruger National Park, which was where we're working, where we can start engaging with the Amakosi, the chiefs, and the Izinduna, the sub-chiefs, in these particular areas to say to them, what is important to you? 20 years ago, what did your land look like? How did you feed yourselves? Where are you going to be now in 20 years' time, and how can we help you get there? We're not going to give you everything, but we will give you the tools to think. And if you can think, you can move forward. So this program that we're working on right now, we're hoping to get an extension for the next year or 2 years, and we're obviously looking for funding to supplement this as we go. It's a multi-million rand project, you can imagine. It's a 64 million rand, which is about, I guess, $3 million US. So it's not small, but it's unbelievably impactful. And the traction that we've had and the enthusiasm that we've had, because we're not going in there saying to the communities, this is the project, this is how it's happening. We're saying to them, okay, yes, we've got some protective clothing and we've got some tools, and here's, there are some seeds, but what are you going to do with it? When this project ends, where are you going to be? We are not going to be here forever. Where will you be? And so we've had wonderful traction and a wonderful response. We've got tons of produce that are being donated to schools and to the communities, and we're starting to just feel that we're onto something. This conservation economy idea is onto something. And so we're trying to define that narrative as we move forward, because what my conservation and my plan for my life is very different to yours and anybody else's. And so we must be respectful of that. And that effectively is what the conservation economy is about. It's about a respectful space where we can sit down, we can listen to each other, and we can say, okay, where are we going from now? And movements like La Via Campesina, for instance, which is a global movement, are just amazing. And so we hope to emulate that kind of thing in KwaZulu-Natal and the various other provinces that we're working in, and just help people to help themselves. Really, that's what we're about.
That's really, really incredible, Francois. That's the only word that comes right now, because first, I think
thank you.
It's so important, my personal perspective, but it is so important to think about sustainability and conservation, but considering the social, because nothing happens without it. And it has like a ripple effect on it. So when you say conservation economy, it really is something fresh, like something that we need, I gotta say. And considering the communities and all of this, it's really such a complex and intricate work to be able to sort of cluster these people, because again, we're dealing with cultural differences sometimes, with different visions. As you said, what I believe is I believe in something, you might believe in something different. So get people together. It's really a immense and quite holistic job. I think I said that before here. It
is complex, and we're embracing that complexity. And what we're also comfortable with is the fact that our outcome may not be the outcome we want, but that's okay. As long as it's the community's outcome, that's important. And that's what, we found with many funders in the past, that they want a specific outcome. It's like saying, hang on, whose community is this? It's not your community. You coming with the money, yes, give us that tool, that's fine, but we're going to use it in the way that we think is important. And that's the key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what makes it like meaningful to people that get involved, like this ability to be independent and use it as makes sense to them. Now, to everybody listening or watching us right now, we unfortunately don't have time to cover everything that
I know
you guys do. It's really amazing. So this is why I urge you to go to their webpage, which is projectafrica.com. Go there, then you can see the projects in depth. You can get so much more information. You can understand better what Francois means here about this conservation economy. It's really, really resourceful and useful information in there for everybody. Now, Francois, I really got to ask you, considering all of this, I mean, I'm really engaged here right now. I'm really amazed by the work that you do. So I want to know, what are the best ways to support the work that you do to help you keep it going?
Okay, so Danielle, I mean, in any organization, we operate from project to project, and it's very difficult to retain really good staff. You don't want to have them on short-term contracts. Fortunately, with this particular program that we're on at the moment, there's a bit of longevity. But we're not a big organization. We've never had a massive endowment fund. So the way people can support actually is just create a monthly, whether it's a debit order or a monthly contribution, even if it's a small amount, that all adds up. Those are the kind of things that help cover, whether it's insurance costs or, just a little bit of extra fuel to get to a particular project site. And every now and then a nice big amount comes in, and we can then put up a seedling nursery or, do a major intervention, build a reservoir. So, to be honest, we'll take whatever you can give us. We're not particularly fussy. There are plenty of links on our website. We do have PayPal. We've got all sorts of other giving platforms. You can donate directly into our bank accounts. And we also, if you're a Section 18, if you're a South African-based organization, we're a tax-exempt public benefit organization, so we can give you all of that sort of stuff. And we do have partnerships with international organizations as well, so for 501(c)s and all that sort of stuff. But bottom line is that every little bit counts. So if you're for instance, if you're a CEO of an organization and this resonates with you, get your team involved. I'm quite happy, to fly out and do a bit of a tour of the States or Europe or whatever. And that's what we are planning on doing as well, to engage personally with people so that it's not just a clinical relationship. We really would like to develop a longer term relationship with key high net worth individuals, but also with companies. So, that little 250, what might not be a lot for you. So $10, for instance, equates to 200 Rand here in South Africa. And with 200 Rand, we can do a fair amount. And $10 is not a lot. So it's all those little bits that add up. Little bits and big bits. We're quite happy to take big bits too. So thank you very much, Danielle. You're an absolute star.
Oh, it was really my pleasure, Francois. Thank you so much. I loved talking to you today.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And then if you need us to add any more stuff, I can give you more details about what we're doing around, the work around the agroecological farming practices, which is very holistic in its nature, around the landscape management, around grazing, helping communities to change their grazing patterns, the erosion control. You'll see some beautiful images. We've also got a Facebook page and an Instagram page. I don't know how these things work, but we've got them. So the more followers we get, the better it is. So,
absolutely.
And when you come to South Africa, please, when you come to South Africa, look us up. Anybody's more than happy. We do not do volunteer programs because those require a tremendous amount of work. But anybody that's wanting to come and just pop along and visit, we're more than welcome. More than happy to host you. So,
that's
again,
awesome.
Thanks for the opportunity. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Danielle.
And for everybody watching or listening to us right now, thank you so much for enjoying this, for staying with us for one more episode. And remember, if you enjoyed this episode, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because that shows the algorithms that this is an important conversation, and then we can spread the word about the importance of the African Conservation Trust. Bye, check their website, and I'll see you in the next episode.